How to study using the groundwater principle. The groundwater study principle is based on the idea that absorbing information is similar to how soil absorbs water. As water comes down from precipitation, it's absorbed into the ground. You can use the same ideas to figure out the best way to study. Part 1: Processing with the groundwater principle. 1. Increase the information or rain to your brain. Groundwater is generally replenished through precipitation such as rain. Once water comes down, it soaks into the ground, creating groundwater. When you're studying, the rain is the information you try to absorb. If you don't spend time reviewing information, your soil will have nothing to absorb. 2. Don't expect a pool of water or information to collect. As water absorbs, it doesn't usually form a pool underground, though it does sometimes sink down into an aquifer. Rather, it just soaks into the ground, saturating it. If it becomes oversaturated, it moves away into lakes and ponds instead of staying in the ground. In other words, if you try to absorb too much water, information, at once, it can flow away elsewhere, and you won't retain it. 3. Let it rain frequently to learn more. One way to make sure your soil absorbs water at a steady rate is to let it precipitate frequently. In other words, you need to revisit information frequently over a longer period to help absorb the information. It helps if you keep up with your classwork as you go along, if you're studying for a class. That way, you're not trying to learn it all right before the test. 4. Be ready to absorb information. When you're in class, it's important to pay attention to what your professor or teacher is telling you. They will often emphasize what's most important, meaning that's what you need to focus on when you do study. Part 2: Learning according to your type of soil. 1. Work around the challenges of clay soil when absorbing information. If you think of your brain as having a specific type of soil, you'll understand how different brains absorb information at different speeds. Some people absorb information more slowly, and they have a clay-type soil. Clay is tightly packed, so it lets water through to the groundwater more slowly, just like people who have this type of brain. If you have a clay brain, you may find that you can't cram information in. You need to plan ahead when studying information, as you'll need to learn a little at a time. You may also need to break down processes. You may feel overwhelmed if you're looking at a complex process, but you'll find it easier to work with if you have smaller steps. 2. Don't rely too much on quick thinking with the gravel-type soil. If your brain is a gravel-type soil, you absorb information more quickly, just as gravel lets through more rain to the groundwater. It can be helpful to absorb information more quickly, but on the other hand, it may lead you to think that you can put off studying. However, studies have shown that you still need to pace out your learning if you expect to retain information in the long run, as cramming the night before a test often only leads to short retention. While you may not need as much time as a clay-type learner, try to spread out what you're learning at least a week before the test. 3. Don't think familiarity means you will recall well. Whether you're a clay or gravel learner, you may misjudge how much time you need because you vaguely remember the material. In other words, you're familiar with it. However, just because you are familiar with it doesn't mean you will recall what you need in detail. To make sure you are retaining information, try rearranging into a form that makes sense to you. That way, you're not just trying to memorize it, you're synthesizing it as well. Part 3: Helping retention. 1. Take notes. One way to help your retention over time is to take notes. Taking notes reinforces the information, helping you to absorb it. Try taking notes both in class when your teacher is speaking, as well as when you're reading for class. As an added bonus, you can use your notes for review later. Don't try to take down every word. Rather, try to keep your notes short. It's best if you can put it in your own words because that means you're processing the information. Try using an outline method. Adding in indentions and a numbering system can help you organize as you go. One way to go faster is to use consistent symbols and abbreviations. 2. Use the water you absorb in your everyday life. If you can, use what you learn to water your soil. In other words, try to apply what you learn to how you live your life. For instance, if you're in an economic class, think about how economics on a national level is similar to your own personal budgeting issues. 3. Don't try to water your soil, absorb information, alone. Working with other students can be beneficial. They can have a take on material that you wouldn't have thought of. If you work together, you can help each other to retain more information than if you work alone. Plus, working in a group can help keep you on track. 4. Take samples of your water to see if you're absorbing information. One way to make sure you're absorbing information is to take samples of water periodically. In other words, try testing yourself on the information, particularly in the week leading up to your test. By testing yourself, you're forcing yourself to recall the information, which helps solidify it in your brain.